to us. I found that just being, a good person to work with on the other end has gotten me very far. And so we're going to kind of touch on things that I do that's kind of standard with how we operate and things that have worked well for us. So, right off the bat, I think just being able to communicate with people or working well with other agents is more important than like almost the deal itself. So we're not, every transaction that you have or every interaction that you have, whether it's a phone call or a text message or an email, it kind of starts building your reputation. And I found early on too, like some of the interactions that I've had with agents was just it was uncomfortable. It wasn't super pleasant. And then in my mind, I'm like, okay, we're just going to kind of take a mental note and I'm not going to forget that. So I think the biggest thing that I've learned is that just kind of staying calm amongst the storm. Things are going to go sideways in deals and in transactions. And I think being able to keep yourself calm and collected throughout that it goes a long ways, not only for your client, but also to keeping the deal together and structured and moving forward. And so I got an example of that we have and then again, just kinda handling other people too. When I was new, I was in my first year, and being in Vermont is where I started. I'm in Jacksonville now. Vermont had a lot of, like, quirky homes, whether it was, off-grid stuff, whether it was, weird septic tanks that were grandfathered in. There's a lot of moving parts to a lot of those deals, so it's not super traditional in the sense that you got to think outside of the box sometimes. There was a listing that was a off-grid solar house. The seller had built the system themselves. I had a buyer who reached out to me. He was interested in it. He asked me if the home had an energy audit done on the home to just kind of see its efficiency and whatnot, which to me is a valid question. I mean, the seller built the system himself. So asking, if it was tested after the fact or had somebody come in and kind of see how efficient the system is, I think is a very valid question. So I relayed the question to the seller's agent and he kind of questioned why I was asking that. And so I just kind of reiterated, like, your seller built a system. We just want to know if it's been, audited to see how efficient it is or whatever. And this was through text messaging. And he sent me a giant text message in all capital letters that basically just said, like, read the listing, do your job. And that was it. And I was like, okay, I don't even know where to take this. And so I took the message and I screenshot it and I sent it to my buyer. And I was just like, here's the answer that I got. And so I reached back out to the agent and I was like, what's the like I had a question. I'm relaying it to you. Like, I don't, and he just said, like, if you had read the listing description, you would see that there's nothing in there about an energy audit and you wouldn't be wasting our time. And so I'm like, okay. And so this guy, if you're familiar with Vermont, in the Stowe area, he's got a pretty big household name. And I don't know if he's got a chip on his shoulder or what the deal is, but it was terrible. And it was so much so that my buyer was like, you know what? I don't even want to deal with this guy. It's going to set the tone for the transaction. And so let's move on. We'll find something else. So that agent lost a potential buyer on a home that is not an easy sell. We're talking an off-grid house that runs off of solar. It's hard to get financing for that kind of stuff. And that opportunity just slipped through his fingers without him realizing it because he was just not fun to deal with. So that was almost 4 years ago now. And I still talk about the story because I haven't forgot about it. So, like, every time I see his name pop up or every time I see him reach out about a listing or send me a question or whatever it is, that immediately that's kind of where my mind goes. And I just think you know, there's no reason for things like that. And it puts a sour taste in somebody's mouth. And so now when he comes up, we're going to kind of raise a little bit of a red flag there. And then it's just, I found that and because that happened so early on, I told myself, like, I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be the one that ruins potential deals for my clients just because of how I'm acting. And there's no reason to do that. So that was very early on, and I've kind of taken that with me moving forward.
What do you think?
And then I really go ahead. Sorry.
What do you think causes that in people? Like, I mean, obviously, we all have a right to have a bad day here and there, but is that his general nature? Is he bigger than thou? Is it you think it's just kind of his general like I don't know. Like, I just wonder, because for us to like embody that and then it's like act that way once, okay, do you get a pass, maybe twice, like I just kind of now know who you are, was it that sense from you of like I kind of just know who this guy is now, and he's not someone I would necessarily choose to do business with if I could.
Yeah, I think so. Obviously, in real estate, and I'm sure everybody knows, like, there's for whatever reason, there's a lot of egos involved. I think that this guy being, the name that he is, he just felt like, he's he's up here and everybody else is kind of down here. And, I don't need to, you should just figure it out. Like, I don't need to do this for you. It's above, what my duties call for. And he kind of, I don't know. It felt like that was not a one-off thing. That was like he just holds himself on a pedestal and everybody else can just kind of get up to his level. And if he can't, then,
Yeah.
too bad. You got to figure it out. So I think that, from that transaction, well, actually, it wasn't even a transaction. It was just an interaction. From there, I kind of made it a point to communicate well, kind of remove the ego from it. And really just, obviously you're going to get some questions or you're going to get some things that maybe you don't know the answer. Maybe your clients are asking weird questions and you want to relay them, but you don't really understand where it's coming from or whatever it is. You can always preface that, before you speak to the agent too, to kind of set the tone of like where you're coming from and here's where it is. And I'll get into that a little later, but I wanted to mention there again, when I was early on, just communication, answering the phone, responding fast, just be clear with, things that you're going to do. And then just trying to take it a step above things that other agents won't. During COVID, obviously the market was crazy. Multiple offers were kind of all over the place. I had first time home buyers. We put an offer in on a place and our offer wasn't anything crazy. It was towards the top, but I called the lady who was a listing agent. I responded well. I responded right away. She had some questions. I responded right away. I called her. I was polite. I let her kind of get a sense of how I communicate. We ended up winning the deal, and then um, nothing. It was pretty smooth sailing throughout it. I always, checked in with her and just said like, "Hey, is there anything you need on our end? Everything's looking good." And I know sometimes people, no news is good news. But usually I try to be the person who's like, "Hey, just giving you a heads up. Everything's tracking where it should be. We're still looking for the closing date on this. Here's, all we're waiting on." That takes 15 seconds to send them a message. And I've had people tell me like, okay, hey, thanks for the update. And then right down to the closing. So we had the closing. I offered to grab their sign and their lockbox, bring it to closing, just makes life a little easier for them. And then we went through the closing afterwards in the parking lot. She was like, "Hey, I don't know how long you've been in real estate, but I just want to let you know, like, it was refreshing to do a transaction with somebody who was pleasant to deal with. We didn't have any issues. If like hiccups came up here and there, like we talked about it like adults, we worked through it. There was, and she just said, like, I just want you to know that, it was nice." And I said, I appreciate it. And part of the reason I told her too that I got into real estate is that from my own past experiences for this same kind of stuff, like whether people, don't get back to you or they talk to you like, you should know what you're doing or whatever it is. I just said like, I just felt like I could deliver a better product. And so she was very appreciative, which was great. Fast forward, about a year later, I had new buyers. She had a listing again, multiple offers. We submitted one. Ours was a VA loan. We were not the highest offer. And we also had a home to sell that wasn't even listed yet. So we submitted the offer. I called her and I just said like, "Hey, look, here's what we got. Here's our offer. Here's our VA. It's a VA loan. The folks are great. We do have to sell their house first, but it's not on the market yet." And I said, "We weren't planning on selling, but they saw your home. They loved it. They loved the neighborhood. They have friends in the neighborhood. Here's what we can do to get their home ready. Here's when it's going to be ready. Here's how fast I think that we can sell it. And we'll keep you updated every step of the way." She ended up calling me back and she told me like, "Hey, your offer has more moving parts. It's a on paper, it's a little bit more challenging loan and it's not the highest one." And I was like, "Okay." And she's like, "However, I've done deals with you before and I'm encouraging the sellers to work with you guys because I know how that's going to be. And the only thing that they're asking is if you can, match the price of the other competitive offer." And so I was like, "Sure. What do you need us to come up to?" She gave me a number. Well, actually, she gave me a range. She didn't tell me exactly what the number was, but she gave me a range. I said, "Give me a minute. I'll call my clients." I called them. They said, "Yep, we're good with that," which that was like a best and final scenario. And we submitted an offer and she still called me back. And then she's like, "Okay, great. You guys got it. We want to work with you." So just from an interaction that I had with her a year ago, I won the deal for our clients. And that was just because it was nice to work with us, which says, just being easy to work with goes a long ways.
I think that also, like, agents attract certain buyers too, right? So, like, they could read that through you that you're reasonable person. You probably have a reasonable customer. We don't, a lot of times we're on the listing side. We don't know who's on the other side, and it's a shot in the dark. And so I always think about like, what are the potential issues that could come up? Because they could come up on the cleanest offers, right? But who do I want to actually try and work through it with? And so it's such a, yeah, I love that. I think the people over just numbers is such a win to think through when we're kind of deciding how we're going to work with our buyers and sellers.
Yeah, and actually that deal, it was a VA deal, and I think the appraisal ended up flagging, there was, like, some paint chipping on the bottom trim of the garage, and it wasn't a big deal, and it was a white trim, it wasn't anything crazy, and so the appraiser flagged it, and it was subject to, having that fixed prior to being able to satisfy the loan, and when I called her, she was like, I'm gonna tell the sellers," which wasn't it was an easy fix. So she called the sellers, and then she called me back, and she's like, "They're swamped, they're overwhelmed, they have too much on their plate, they can't get it done." And I was like, "Okay, well, this is like a silly thing to not be able to get through." So I'm like, "Are they okay if I go and do it?" And she was like, "Really?" And I was like, "It's like a 15-minute job. It's not going to be, I got to scrape the flakes off and then put some white paint on it." And she's like, "Let me ask them." And so she asked them, and she was like, "Yeah, that would be great." And I went over there. The sellers were there, which sometimes is weird or uncomfortable, but because the transaction up to that point has been so easy, they were just like, "Hey, how you doing? We really appreciate it." I think the dog came out and said hi, and I was like, "Oh no, it's all good. Like we got three, we're good." They chatted a little bit, and then they went back inside. They continued to pack up and move, and I painted the door, and it was I think it was literally 15 minutes. Took some pictures, sent it to the appraiser, and he's like, "Yeah, you guys are good." And then again, she was like, "Thank you so much for working through it." And on that point, like I've done that with, and not saying everybody's handy or whatever, but like I've done that with handrails, simple things that luckily I have the skill set to do basic things. But if there's something that I've had deals too where, it shouldn't be our problem, and other agents are like, well, they're not going to do that. I'm like, okay,
Right.
well, we're talking, $100 to pay somebody else to go put a graspable handrail on 3 steps. Like, what are we doing here? And a lot of people don't do it, which is wild to me. Being the person that's like, okay, I'll take care of it, or I'll find somebody to do it, and if I have to eat $100 so everybody is happy, then, whatever, I'm okay with that.
I think a lot of people would spend 10 times that amount of time, your 15 minutes to go knock it out, talking about it and
Yeah,
figuring out, like, well, what, and coming up with 3 or 4 different scenarios of how we could get this pulled off. And then before you know it, like you're pushing up against closing and the appraiser doesn't have it in time. And then you got to push closing back. And it's like, should the seller have just done it? Yeah, probably. They probably should have stayed up an extra 15 minutes at night. But like, we know what goes through all their sellers' heads when they're in that process. So I love the action takers.
yeah, yeah, and to that point too. So when we like, if I have an offer that's an FHA or VA, and we're submitting it, and I understand that there's some caveats to those, and some people see like a VA loan and they freak out, or they don't understand it. Usually, when I submit that offer, I'll call the agent too, and I'll just tell them like, look, here it is. Here's a VA offer. Your home's beautiful. I don't really see any issues. However, like potentially, we could see, depending on the appraiser that you get, like maybe we need a handrail, or maybe we need to fix this paint a little bit. And then I just reassure them, like, if that pops up, we'll handle it. Your sellers don't need to worry about it. If they want to, they can, but if they got too much on their plate, like we will take care of it. We'll find somebody to take care of it. We're not afraid of it. I mean, it just kind of takes their initial reservations. If you were to just to submit the offer and kind of let it ride. I know agents, I did that early on, and I had agents call me back, and they're like, "Hey, your offer was great, but it was a VA loan, so we went with this other one." And I was like, "Well, what? Like there's nothing wrong with the house. I don't understand." And so I've learned I'll take what I assume that they're going to have for reservations, and I'll just kind of squash them right there before they even give me an answer. But then also before they go to their clients and explain the offer, they can be like, "Hey, here's the offer, here's the type of financing. This could pop up," but they've already addressed that, like they'll handle it. And I think having, again, that quick conversation prior to has gotten us a lot of deals where it just kind of puts people at ease to that something small is not going to hold this up. Then as far as like putting in offers again, just to kind of close out on that, something that's works well for me, and I don't know where I heard it from. Actually, you know what? I think it was I had a listing, and an agent said it to me. They put the offer. There was multiple offers in there, and they just called me and they just said like, "Hey, you know, hopefully our offer is one of the top contenders. If for whatever reason it's not on top of the pile, please call me and like give us the opportunity to put it there." Which when you say that in person and it's not through a text message, and they can kind of hear like we want the home, and if we're close, and we just need something to kind of take put us over the edge. That one has gotten me many deals where the agent calls me back, and again, it's like a best and final situation where they still call me back and they're like, "Hey, you said that if there's something you can do to put your agent on, or you put your offer on top of the pile to just ask. And I was like, yep, absolutely. What is it? And usually they have like something that's like small, or like, can you match these terms, or can you come up like, a couple thousand or whatever it is to make them, a little more appealing. And again, a lot of it would come down to like, we would rather work with you and your buyers because we know how that's going to go. We just need you to kind of, get close to where it's at. And I've had many people call me back and ask that. And then it's just a quick call to the buyers and just say, hey, here's what they're asking. If you guys are good with this, then it's ours. And I think every single time my buyers are like, yep, let's do it. Which is funny because like we try to have the conversation like, hey, this is a best and final. They're probably not going to negotiate with us at this point. They're just going to take the best one. And then talk to those people and tell us when it's done, and people still submit offers, and then they're still willing to move a little bit more. But I mean, at some point it's gotta, there's gotta be a spot where you stop. But usually the thing that puts us over the edge is like something small in the grand scheme of things. And so, just putting that little line in there and calling people and just say, hey, if there's something that we can do to put us on top of the list, that one's gotten me a lot of callbacks and a lot of deals.
You're just talking about standing out, and some of it's standing out as being a normal person that's easy to work with and not crazy. Any other things you do like that that help you just kind of? Yeah, I always think about it like if you were submitting for a job application and there's a pile of 100 resumes on the guy's desk. Like, how do you find your way to the top? How do you just at least be seen? Anything else you do like in that offer? Because we're in, kind of mid spring season, going into summer season. We'll start to see some more multiple offer situations like that. Anything that will help somebody stand out more than others. How do we stand out from others in multiple offer scenarios? I mean, even two offer scenarios. How do we make sure that we are at least highly considered? If Ben's got a listing and he's getting three or four offers. And a lot of times we know somebody sends an email, they hope you got it. You never hear from them at all. So sometimes the very basic stuff makes us stand out. Call, hey, I submitted an offer. I get great buyers, tell you a little about them. Have Matt call as well and connect as the lender. And it's like, we at least have to be considered in that scenario. Is our price off? Maybe our buyer can't go higher, but could we be considered, even like you said, not even being the highest offer? How do we give our buyers that strategic advantage? So any other ways you guys have used to stand out of the pack?
Hey, Justin, I got one. Speed. So on one representing listing side here, the buyers that came in were submitted a showing request within an hour, went and saw it the next hour after that, and had a clean offer in our inbox immediately. They offered full list price. And then now here comes the influx of multiple showings and multiple other people. But what we as sellers came back to was that very first buyer needed to be in this community, needed to be in this neighborhood. And what we did was we went back to them and said, hey, kind of similar like we were talking about, can you guys match these other current offers that we had? And they said, yes, absolutely. And we knew that those were going to be great buyers. We got through inspection. There was a little things that came up, but it was nothing to them because they had to be in this community. And we saw it the moment we hit the market. Once again, they were in the house within 2 hours, 3 hours of being on the market. So not that every time we can drop everything as agents or buyers are ready to go. I just wanted you to know from the listing side, it spoke volumes to those buyers and how bad they wanted that home, was being the quickest to it, submitting a good, clean offer immediately. And maybe that listing agent or that seller needs something now. And maybe you can get a deal done before many other people go and see it and drive up the price further.
I love too, like behind the scenes, you're saying you're evaluating the buyer, saying, hey, they're not going to walk away over something silly. They're not going to walk away over some flaking paint. Like we have that real concern with a lot of buyers, but like they really don't have any leverage because there's no other houses to buy in this neighborhood they need to be in. Great. One I've used, and I try and do it as often as I can. It's not always possible, but actually sending a video offer to go along with my offer to stand out, like just talking through it. And I've sent these to a lot of you guys. I think I actually have a video like this in school somewhere if you want to watch it, where it's just like, hey Ben, good chatting with you. I wanted to just send you this offer. Here's a little bit about my buyers. Here's how we approached value. I think we're on point. I feel like we're putting together, a really, really good fair offer. And then hit my bullet points, my high points. Like he can, at that point, is it just I feel like it puts perspective as to who they're working with versus just just an email that that you could read one way or another. There's no way to mischaracterize how I'm saying things if I'm doing it by way of video versus sometimes we read email or text and it's like short and you can't really get a lot of context. But I've had that just and here's my belief. I don't know if it ever happens. Who thinks some realtors are lazy? It's an easy question. There's a lot that are lazy, right? I would be shocked if some of these videos never make it over to their buyer, like forward it over. Like sometimes you might have the buyer choosing, based on an agent that's just like, here, check this one out. Here, check this one out. We'll talk about it. So, it's like anything, they may not do that, but at least it's an attempt. And it doesn't take me more than, another extra minute or so with my email. I actually
Actually,
had this.
I was just gonna say that, to that point, I had a lender in Vermont that would do the same thing. He's like, "Hey, do you mind if I send them, the list agent a quick message?" And he would send them videos and just basically say like, "Hey, I'm so and so. I work for whoever I'm representing or I'm helping out with buyers so and so, and I just want to give you, let you know that they're very well qualified." And he basically just like reassured that as far as the financing goes, like there's no issues. And he would be like, "Hey, can I send that?" I'm like, "Sure, go ahead. I don't think it's gonna hurt."
Yeah. I had during COVID and listing that had like, I don't know, probably 12 offers or something. And it was like, it's overwhelming at that point. I don't, everybody's like, I'd love to go back to that. I would not. It was miserable. It was not fun. You're managing 12 and another one's coming. And it's like, you never know what the right decision is. But we had a bunch of great agents write an offer. Like a lot of people y'all would know from being around Orlando on this particular house. A few of them I remember specifically were from Weimer Group, who I've known Jenny for a long time. And so I sent videos to everybody we let down. Like I just wanted to let everybody know. I didn't want to push it pending and then start getting barraged with calls. So I put a video out. I said, "Hey, I've explained the scenario. Here's what happened. We had this offer. We could, it was just too good. We had to accept it. We appreciate all of y'all's offers, whatever." And sent it out to all of them. And I got a text later and said, "You're going viral at Weimer Group," or something like that. And I was like, "What?" I was like, "What are you talking about?" And apparently we had like 3 offers from that brokerage and they all got it. They were like, "It's the greatest decline we've ever had," kind of thing. And I was just like, "That's cool." Like some goodwill. And again, to the point of like, how do you just be fairly easy to work with? I think it does carry a lot more weight than we think sometimes.
I think I actually just mentioned this at our last meeting when we were talking about inspections, but um, a lot of times to help win the offer, we'll put in the additional terms that the buyer will not be asking for any repairs during the inspection unless there's an item that's over $1,000. And that's really helped because, a lot of times sellers are just like, "Oh, well, okay, we've come down to this point, but we're not doing anything during inspection." And then it just kind of gives them the peace of mind that, hey, we're really coming into the inspection just to do our due diligence and not to nickel and dime you.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, and to echo off of that, so we've had, obviously we're still learning the ropes here in Florida, but in Vermont with, old homes and stone foundations and again, septics and things like that, we would put caps on those inspections too, like Kat just said. But sometimes people would think like, yeah, well, it's easy to get to, $1,000 a quote, or they can, whatever it is. So sometimes when I know that there's going to be some items that pop up, I've called the agent too and just said like, "Hey, we're not looking to beat you up over the inspection. Really, we're just checking that there's no major items. Do you prefer an inspection cap with a dollar amount that we can't go over? Or do you want it to just be a pass fail inspection where we get the home inspection, we can review it, and then based off of what we find, we can either press forward or we can back out." And that lets them know like we're not, we don't care that it's missing an outlet cover or whatever it is, the small items. And so we've had people before and they're like, "Hey, you know what? Actually, we prefer that you don't do a dollar amount because we don't want to have, additional people come out here to give us quotes and do this. We would rather have it just be a pass fail after the week inspection period and then figure out whether or not you want to move forward or not to." So sometimes we give them the option and people seem to like that too.
Let's flip. How long have you been in real estate, Ben?
June will be 4 years.
Okay, perfect. All right, so we've got some folks on here who have been in less than a year, and the old saying is true. You kind of got to fake it till you make it a little bit, but you also don't want to pretend to be something you're not. You don't want to pretend to be an expert. Like I think a lot of experienced agents would be happy to work through with a new agent if they are, able to, at least do the basic things well. Any advice you have from maybe your first or second year in terms of maybe you're scared calling an agent who's been doing this for 30 years, like the guy in Stowe, or or something else. So what advice would you have for them in terms of how to start to lay the groundwork working with other agents?
Yeah. So whether it's other agents or clients in general too. So I've always been one to, I'm not afraid to be like, I don't know the answer. However, I'll find out. And so the big thing that I've found is that it's okay to be honest. It's okay to tell them like, hey, I actually don't know. That's a great question. I don't actually know, but I'll find out. And then the real thing is that you have to find out. So, do what you say you're going to do. So if they ask a question, you got to figure out the answer within again, speed is key here where you're going to figure it out relatively soon and get back to them. And then as far as agents go, I've found that being honest with agents, again, it goes back to the communication and the way you ask questions and the way you handle it and the way you talk to them. I think it's okay to just be like, hey, I've never done this before. Can you like bear with me while we're going to work through it. It's new to me. If you have any advice or how have you done it in the past, I'm open to hearing that. And then usually I'll call Kat or I'll call staff or I'll call somebody in Vermont, depending on what the question is, to reassure like what they're telling me is lines up and it all tracks. But I've just been, I don't like telling somebody, it makes me uncomfortable if I'm like, oh yeah, I've done that a million times when I haven't. It doesn't make me feel good inside. So I found just being honest with people, tell them like, hey, you know what, this is new to me. Let me figure it out, and then figuring it out, and it seems to go a long ways. And I think people respect that you're being honest with them.
So you've been in this 4 years. You did
Yep.
2 years. How many years in Vermont?
Yeah, almost 3. So I moved last July. I came to Florida.
Okay. And then you have iconed at EXP once.
Year 3, I iconed. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. So meaning what kind of volume did you do that year?
So my first year I did 17 deals, and then my second year I think I did 26, and then last year I did 34 or 36, somewhere in there, mid 30s. And then this year it's gonna be close. We've had like I think I got like a handful that are pending that are getting pushed back. There's just things that just keep popping up, which we're gonna close, but it's getting closer to that date. And then for the better part of a year, I haven't even been here, so it's been a little bit of a challenge. But we're like on the cusp. But I mean, give or take, it's gonna be around 30 this year too.
Okay. So any of our new folks, opportunity to just ask questions on this front as to like being able to have that trajectory. One, first couple years are definitely harder than the second couple years, probably. Even though the market may have been different, whatever, but like you have experience to rely on now. Anyone have questions as to how to be on the same trajectory? Like who would love to be at 30, tracking towards 40, deals within 3 years?
Me.
Let's hear it. Well, so what questions would you have for somebody like Ben who is, because I think the problem is for a lot of us, it's you're finding people who you can look to. And for me, it's always like anytime I've in these coaching events or whatever, it's like once you see the person, you're like, Ben's just a real guy. Like he's just probably very good at his job, but like, and it's the same like for me, like anytime I go see these people, I'm like, they're doing how much more business than me? Like, what are they doing so different? It's like, oh no, they just do it a little better more often, And I'm like, oh, that's all you got to do. But like, what are those things that y'all have questions about that would help you get to that level?
For me will be like I feel like as a new agent, I still like struggle like have met like I did a market this weekend and it's like communicating like what is the knowledge that you really like to share first when you introducing kind of not introducing yourself but talking about the business and how can you pursue a new buyer like when you randomly meet someone like I was outside and there's a sale by owner house and these buyers are looking at a house nobody open and they're walking so I stop and talk to them and I did a market this weekend and I had a lot of people who came and talked to me and I felt like where you can do to pursue them directly to like reach out next like I feel like I missed out like not setting an appointment with them to follow up like they got my business card and everything but I feel like I'm missing that kick of like how to get them to trust me or call me back or interact with me and help them knowing that they are looking for help.
Yeah. We found in the beginning, again, knowing that I'm new and whatnot, we just try to be a resource, whether it's to the area or whether it's to the process or whatever it is. If people are looking for like a handyman, something simple, we always try to just be a resource without trying to sound like salesy. So when we still do it today is when we chat with people like that, and Lindsay's better at it than I am because she's She's much more social than me, especially now that we're in Florida. And it's so easy to, what we try to do is we try to build rapport with people. So, for us being here in Florida now, we don't really know anybody. So if we're out in the neighborhood and we see somebody or they're looking, we see them at a model home or we see them, obviously they're walking through the neighborhoods and they're looking at things. We can strike up a conversation and it's easy to build rapport because they're doing exactly what we just did. So we know that they're probably relocating from somewhere else. They probably don't live down the street. They probably have kids. We do too. So like we just kind of ask some questions to kind of feel out like where they're at in the stage. And then we just try to be a resource. So as we just kind of generate the conversation, if you can give me your business card, and then eventually like you have to let them know who you are. But we've also found that, letting people know who we are and that we're local agents, but we're here to help from somebody who's doing exactly what you're about to do. We found that people have reached back out down the road. I mean, obviously it's a little bit of a numbers game here, but being a resource, not being pushy, letting people know that we literally have done what you're about to do. And then in the conversation, if there's something that you can pick up on, that whether they say like they're trying to figure out or they're trying to get a feel for or whatever it is, just kind of take a note of that. And then if you can get their contact info too, I'll give it a few days and then reach back out and just be like, hey, were you able to figure out, or ask them like what their overall feel was of the neighborhood that you saw them in, or just something that you can kind of touch back on and continue to kind of put yourself in front of them. Again, being a resource. And then we've found that we've had people where I've done that, and then my first initial thing as soon as they found out I was an agent, they're like, "We're not interested," and I'm like, "That's fine. Like I'm talking to you as like a dad who moved from New England coming down here. Like I can just answer those questions," and they're like, "Oh, okay." Well, so then they kind of let their guard down. They have a normal conversation, and now I have those same people who are like, "Hey, do you have any insight on like schools or this, or do your kids play sports, and if so, like what programs are they in?" And so now we're just talking. That's an easy conversation. And we've had, it may be a little slow in the beginning, but people are in early stages. And then it just transforms into, hey, you know what? We do want your services. And I'm like, okay, great. Like we're happy to help.
The problem is too many people see that as like a long road. And it is a long road. Like that doesn't transact tomorrow. A quick story, Omira. I was fishing last week and it was awesome. Great fishing, great
That's
weather. The here's the thing. We did it one day and like you're kind of driving, just fishing the whole time. But you realize day two, you're like, man, we only caught fish in the morning and we caught them after like 5. And every day the weather was great to be able to have lines dropped and stuff at like, after lunch, 3:30, 4 o'clock. No bites whatsoever. Like nothing, like just bare ocean, like nothing happening. And you realize you've got to fish when the fish are eaten. Like you can't just pluck fish from the sea. And the same is true in this business. Like that's why we call our lead pond a pond because we're fishing. We're constantly looking. But if you're looking for somebody who just lives in a house and they have no intention of moving, you're wasting your breath unless you're just adding rapport, building rapport down for 5 years from now when they're ready to sell. Right? So I think a lot of times we've got to realize if you're going to fish when they're not biting, you got to throw a million lines out and maybe you'll get lucky. Or you're very intentional. And so we could have probably saved a lot of gas by sitting still until 5 o'clock and then caught the same amount of fish without any question. Right. So I think it's important for us to realize like if you're at like a farmer's market or something this weekend, like a lot of people are there. That doesn't mean that's a different community of people than people walking through an open house. They're a little farther down funnel. They're a little more interested. They still may not be interested at all, but they're a little more interested than they would have been, right? And so you just got to think about the psyche and the willingness and the openness to those conversations. Otherwise, like Ben is spot on. Like we should be more open to just rapport building, conversations, getting to know many, many people. And then how many more times can we do that? Like you've just got to drop more lines.
And we found too, to echo that point, we found too early on, like I think what burns people out is that a lot of times new agents get caught on like the next deal. And so they're so focused on like making the next deal happen that they lose sight of like it's a long-term game. So I think people burn out and they fizzle out because, they're so stressed out over the next transaction that depending on what you have going on outside of real estate, but like you got to understand that the things that you're doing now are for 6, 9, 12 months down the road. And once you kind of got over the fact that like okay, it's going to be a little bit of a struggle with things coming in the meantime, but until then we're just going to kind of keep planting these seeds, and we understand that these are long-term relationships. And again, even like with buyers and sellers, like if you help them once, as long as that transaction went well, you're probably going to do it a handful of times afterwards where, if people feel like you're just trying to close this deal so you can, you can call it a win and move on and forget about us after the fact, that's not long-term success there. That's going to, sure, it'll get you a paycheck now, but it's not going to help your business down the road. And I think we realized that early on. And, the first 2 years we're a hustle. It felt like a hustle. Every deal was like, I feel like I have to work super hard for all of these. But it was year 3 in the first quarter, which is a terrible time in Vermont. Nobody wants to travel. The roads are either ice or mud or whatever. It's freezing. Nobody wants to look at houses. Nobody wants to sell their house. Everybody's house looks bad. And that first quarter of year 3 was the biggest quarter I've ever had. And I think 95% of those were people calling me, hey, we're looking to do this, or hey, can we sell this? Can you help us with this? And I didn't have to, it was the first time I didn't feel like I had to go chase it. And then I decided to move. So we're back into that. But yeah, I think just understanding that, it's a long-term play. And at some point, for us, it was about 2 to 3 years, things start coming back around, and it's all the work that you put in up front initially with all those people and just being a resource. And then, as long as you kind of just check in with them, and it doesn't have to be real estate related. Like we do pretty good on touching base with, with kids, or again, my mind works weird where I'll remember a weird detail that somebody was asking about. And then I'll reach out and be like, hey, did you ever figure this out? Did you ever find anything, or how did that go? And I think those small touch points go a long way. So when the time comes and they're ready, they're like, they call you.
It's awesome. Any others? We have time for one or two more questions. I'll pick some people. Kravinsky, who's taking it?
Yeah, I was gonna say, since I'm still new in real estate and I really want to be honest, I'm working so hard, but I feel like I'm like hidden in like a plateau, you feel me? And I really committed to growing in this business, but as a new agent, it's very hard. And for those of you guys who've been reaching the next level, I would like to ask you guys, like, what would you guys, would say the one or two most important thing for us to do, like for us to move to the next level, because it's really hard when you just started. And I know you guys have been to it. You guys moved to the next level already. So I wanna get my advice.
Want me to go first?
Go for it.
So for us, again, I think it just comes back to being a resource. So you got to get involved. I'm not the loudest one in the room. I don't even like social media. But if you look at my social media pages, you'd probably be like, okay, because I've grown there, because I know that it's important, it's free, it's easy for a newer agent to do, and it doesn't really cost anything. So I think putting yourself out there, letting people know what you do, how you can help, and just, again, being a resource, getting involved, talking to people, and it feels redundant, and it feels like, what am I doing? This isn't helping. I think consistency is kind of where this pays off, and those that continue to do it. And you can take like a couple of lanes, and we've said, and I've talked to Lindsay about this before too, like there's so many opportunities in so many directions that you can go. I would say find something that feels good, that you somewhat enjoy doing, and it doesn't feel like, I mean, if it's uncomfortable, that's okay, but there's going to be things that you're like, I don't cold call. I'm not going to cold call somebody. I won't. You can't pay me to do that. Some people love it. So I would say pick a couple of things and then really just kind of be consistent with it. And eventually you're like, things will start coming together. And then it feels like sometimes you can feel like the momentum shift, and then other times it comes out of nowhere and you're like, I don't understand. I've been doing this, the whole time. And now all of a sudden I'm super busy and it's great. But I think it's just like a snowball effect. So for me, it was picking a couple of things that I enjoyed doing that were easy for me to do and continue to do on a consistent basis. And then from there, I just, I made it a point to just do it.
It's good. I think I like to think about being patient, more patient than you think you need to be, but operating with absolute urgency at the same time. And those are two hard things to let live in parallel at the same time, right? Like how do you be patient and not become complacent? How do you be patient but like hit each day with like, I've got to make something happen this week, knowing, hey, if it doesn't, it's still cool because I know what I'm doing is worth it, right? It makes sense. So that I think that ultimately becomes a challenge, and not deciding, like, this would be for anybody, like deciding I want this to work, because too many people aren't committed enough to do it long enough until it works. And anybody will tell you, yeah, like you said, in year 3, you started getting calls and you're like, oh, this is great. It's just coming to me. And everybody would look at him and think he was just like an overnight success in that regard, right? It's just like, oh, it's just, he's got it easy. He's got a good network. But like, how can you layer the things that you love doing and lace it with opportunities to interact with people? You know, like if you love working out, like be a part of a workout community. If you love, you know, if you've got people say, well, I got kids, I can't do all that stuff. Cool. Be a part of the PTSA at their school. Like find a place to be in community with people, and then do what Ben's been talking about the whole time, is just be real, be normal. You don't have to wear a billboard on your back. You don't have to hand out your card at Publix to people who aren't looking to buy a house, they're looking to buy bread. Like, I'm sorry, that's not a house buyer, right? And I think we've been like too many times told like everyone's an opportunity. And it's like, that's just to me, that's a terrible way to live. It doesn't build community. It makes everything feel transactional. So church, be there, like be a part of your groups. Find groups to be committed to and being a part of and showing up. And if you're from a college, find a alumni association. If you're from a, like, whatever it is, like, and not just one. I would be like, I need my calendar full of things of me being in front of people until the point I can't do it anymore because I've been, but then you start knowing people, then you're committed to going because you're held accountable to be a part of things that you want to do in the first place. But it's great. You're going to love it. Or you're not cut out for being in sales.
I was just going to piggyback off of what you were saying, Justin. Like when you're not busy and it's like, oh, I want this to happen so bad. This is the perfect time to be doing all of those things, because once you get busy and you don't have time to go to every event, like try to, right, from somebody who is like on the other side of it, try to savor this opportunity that you have of not being super busy. Because like Justin said, of course, you're going to have to keep doing it so that you keep getting business at some point. But there is no opportunity like the one you have right now, like that you have this time. I also, being a part of these different organizations, and if you have time to volunteer, that is a perfect way to when you volunteer, show up and show out like what a great volunteer you can be, because that is a perfect way for people to see your work ethic and want to refer you and say like, oh my gosh, this person I'm sure would be amazing to work with as a realtor because they do so much for our organization.
It's huge. And people with money find philanthropies to be a part of. So just like be smart about it. Like the events that are put on are like, these are big, like in Orlando is full of them. Like there's so many different organizations. I'm in the Make-A-Wish, on the Make-A-Wish board. If anybody wants to be a part of a Make-A-Wish committee, I got you. You let me know, you're in. Always need help. Like there's no shortage of opportunity. And there's so many people involved. Like I don't know all these people. I don't know any of the committee people. Just we do different things. And so you have opportunity to connect with people doing the work and being a part of these things. Any of these other associations too, like becoming part, like the membership chair or become a membership committee where you're just trying to bring more people in. Like I get a list of names and phone numbers and email addresses. Like I'm in. Like if I'm trying to connect with people, like I've now had opportunities to connect with people, right? So be smart about what you're volunteering to do, because if your intention is to build community and find people that you enjoy doing life with, like that's going to be a different overall experience than just trying to connect with, just to be involved. No, like be involved, make it a part of your job. We have the blessing of having this flexible schedule where we can be involved in certain things like that, right? Like a lot of people that work a 9 to 5, they couldn't commit to doing any of that. We can do it and say, man, this is great. I get to give my time, and I'm also getting to meet a lot of great people.
I think too, like adding on to that, just two perfect examples. Justin, this is something that you talk about constantly, is like your VIP list. And, Justin's so good at his clients come from his community. And another perfect example, if you're looking at someone who's maybe not as experienced and long-term as Justin, is like Kristen McIntosh, right? Like she sold I think it was 2 million in the first quarter this year. I have the privilege of working her loans. Like every single client that she has, every single one is from Cycle Bar or Run Club or just friends of friends. And so it's just something that, I feel like Justin's so intentional about it. Kristen's she's always doing stuff with people. And that's how all of her business is coming. So if it's like getting that organic traffic, it's like you got to be intentional with it. But to what Justin was saying is do the things that you like and then just meet people and talk to people and stay in communication with people. Because there's some people that are just naturally good at it, and then but you can also just be intentionally.
I think that there's a filter to that though, Jeremy. Like, because if you're doing stuff you like, it's not like you've got to go like work a room all the time. Like you're doing stuff with people who have similar interests, and therefore you're going to have a natural connection. That's why it's like, don't take
Yeah.
my playbook, do your own. Like your own could be a lot of different things that I would be like, I don't know, if you're into LARPing, like you're not going to find me at the LARP club hangout, right? But I don't know. They live in houses too, I imagine. Maybe
Yeah.
imaginary houses.
I got a question here.
Yeah.
For both Justin and Ben. It's a two-part question. So Ben, I'm going to start with you. What you say you don't do cold calls. What specifically did you do in your very first year? And I would say, like, even think back about your very first 6 months. What was it that you focused on? What were you doing? How did you capture your first real, first buyer or seller? Just talk about that experience and what was going through your head and all that.
Yeah. So a couple of things that kind of got me started. The first one was that I own, we have one short-term rental now, but at the time I owned a couple of them. I was involved in the Facebook groups for short-term rentals. And again, just being a resource, people would ask questions, I'd chime in, I'd give my experience. There's lenders that I've worked with that I'd recommend them. But being in Vermont, there wasn't for whatever reason on those pages, there wasn't a whole lot of Vermont agents that were in the groups. So I took advantage of that, which ultimately it took a little while, but once I got a couple of people to reach out and I helped them buy short-term rentals and they worked well, they started telling their friends, referrals started coming in. And then a couple of the bigger groups, like if you guys are familiar with like the Savvy group, who's part of Fast Forward Movement, I became their short-term rental referral they don't even know anything about Vermont. They call it like the Green Mountains or what. I don't even know. It's not like a specific area in Vermont. So anybody that would come in with Vermont at all, whether it was, northern part of the state or the southern part of the state, they connect them with me. STR Insights, same deal. So a lot of the deals came from that, and that was just me being involved in the Facebook pages. And then the other one was I had a lot of deals in the beginning that were smaller price points, and it was people that I talked to that they weren't quite ready to purchase, or maybe they needed to take care of a few things to kind of fix their debt to income or fix their credit a little bit. And I think that it would have been easy for most people to just kind of write them off. Like they're not ready to buy a house. They're not going to buy a house, anytime in the remote future. It's not worth my time. And they just kind of dismiss them. And I didn't do that. So I would connect them to the right people. I would connect them to a lender so we can kind of go through like, okay, your credit's not very good, but you have like these lingering payments that, the remaining balance is a few $100, but you're paying, it's crushing your debt to income. So like, let's tackle this. So I connected them with the right people. I checked in with them periodically. And I would say the first year, half my deals were ones that I could have easily just kind of swept under the rug and forgotten about. And I'm sure most people did. And I think people feel that too. So like, I think they had been given the runaround leading up to that point, and I acted like I cared, which I did. I showed them that I was a resource and they stuck with me. And then that led from like, hey, if you help me buy a house, you can definitely help my friend buy a house. Or like, hey, my parents are looking to buy a house. So like, now my $150,000 mobile home is now our single family because, my family or my parents want to, upgrade theirs. And so it just kind of snowballed from there. And so I think, talking to people, feel where they're meeting them where they're at, and then kind of helping them get to those points and being that resource. And then I've just found a little bit of a niche with the short-term rentals as well. So the two together, that's kind of where I started.
Justin, you mentioned this one's for you. You mentioned not being like a billboard, like you being that salesy guy. But is it like the other night, I went to a restaurant where they sat us in a booth and it had two tables. We sat there first, and then another couple came and sat, and we had a great conversation and everything. And I kind of just like leaned into it, like, I wouldn't be doing my job if I don't do this, but here's my card. If you have friends, he was talking about how he's from Colorado. He has friends that want to move down. I was like, if they're interested, here's my card. Is there moments where it is actually appropriate to kind of like, be that? Yeah,
of course, you got to be real. One, that's a great tax strategy because now you write that meal off. So there's one angle to talking about business at dinner. On the other hand, I would say, like, for me, we're having this conversation. I'm going to ask so many questions about you that you're obligated at some point to ask about me. That makes sense? What do you do? Why are you here?
Yeah.
Where are you from? Where'd you move from? Da-da-da. What do you do for work? Eventually, you're going to be like, oh, yeah. what what do you do? You know? Okay. Now you asked, which is very different than I heard you mention from across the room that your brother might be moving here and I want to give you my card. Like there's a difference, right? And so the rapport first mentality like gains like the opportunity to build relationship before you're selling. Like we want to be relational, not transactional. Transactions just come and go, right? We don't want to live in that space. We want to live in the space of connecting with people at a deep level and then having that opportunity where they're like, "Man, do you have a card?" Like, what if he asked for your card? Would that feel like more of an opportunity than pushing it to him? So we want to, and I think you just become that way over time, where you are good at asking questions and building conversations and relationships enough to the point where they're going to want to work. They're not going to want to work with anyone else. Usually that doesn't happen in a sitting. Usually that happens in over time. That's why I like the community building, being a part of a gym or a church group or whatever it is, where it's like, I just get to see this person every week. Week 1, week 2, they may not know anything about me, but I'm learning about them because that's my nature, right? Is to ask more questions and get to know them. So I just want us to like start flexing that muscle of learning about other people better, where it doesn't always have to point back at me. Like Ben said, if I can just help you out in some way, like I'll help you out in some way. I don't want to help you come move a couch necessarily, but I will. Maybe. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
All right, guys. Ben, thank you for doing this, man. It was it's great. It's great hearing about the journey, and we'll be happy to do more of this and see the continued journey in a new market. Well, I got one last question for you. You got to start again in a new market, which is no different than a little different. Like if you grew up here or something, like starting it, but you're still starting. What did you do differently the second time around than you did the first? Like you got to re-go at starting.
Yeah. So and it's funny. So when we transitioned, when I first joined EXP, I actually joined a team in Vermont. And then it was shortly after that I was like, you know what, this has been great, but I think I can do this with just the people that I have around me. And when I was making the move, I reached out to that team lead. Actually, he heard that I'd been leaving, and he told me something that kind of eased my mind a little bit. And he was like, "Good for you, great." And he just said, like, you're just fishing. It's a different pond, but you're just fishing. So I was like, "Oh, you're kind of right. Like, maybe we have to use a different lure or whatever it is, but like you're doing the same thing." So we took what has worked well for us, and kind of leaned into it. So when we're here, we realized that like the people that we're going after are the people that are doing the exact same thing that we just did. And it's really just been, rather than in Vermont, we used to we paid for some leads here and there, and it's internet leads. So like you guys know how that is. Rather than doing that, which I don't like wasting time. I don't like spending time and energy on things that consume a lot of our time, especially now that we got kids, they're getting older. Like I don't want to do that. So we decided that when we moved here, we were going to be more involved with the community, with the local area. I mean, our community is going to have 4,500 homes in it when it's done. Like that, there's a lot of business that we can walk to. So we took all of the money that we were going to put towards to leads and get our name out there and marketing and things like that. And we leaned into social media, but we also just took that money and we put it back into the community. So we held like a turkey trot this year as brand new people. People had no idea who we were. And we're like, hey, we'll take this on. We'll do this. We did the letters to Santa thing. And so like those things cost like nothing compared to, but it put us in front of thousands of people. And so we've just kind of been leaning into just being involved, showing up to the parks. We're talking to other parents, telling them who we are, talking to our neighbors, letting them know who we are, letting them know where we came from. And we've gotten business from all the above. And that's just, building rapport with people. It's easy to do because, if you're at a park with your kids and the adults next to you are not, I mean, they're not just sitting there watching kids play, like they got kids out there too. So it's easy to have conversations when you kind of like what you were saying before, where you go to these events that have, you're interested in, whether it's cycling or church events or whatever it is. Like you're talking to like-minded people already. Just being involved has been a game changer for us with the transition.
That's awesome, man. Thank you for doing this, guys. Thank you for being on here and asking good questions. We'll wrap it up there.
Appreciate it, Ben. Awesome job,
Yeah,
man.
no problem. Thanks.